Breaking news. A shocking interview with the Prince of Darkness himself has just been leaked, sending ripples through the rock community worldwide. Heavy metal icon Ozzy Osbourne, known for his typically diplomatic public persona and respect for fellow musicians, has allegedly named the 7 rock stars he absolutely cannot stand, in a conversation that was supposed to remain private. The interview, conducted during a promotional stop for his latest album, took an unexpected turn when the legendary Black Sabbath frontman began a candid assessment of several high-profile musicians with whom he's had contentious relationships over his 5-decade career in music. Industry insiders are stunned by the uncharacteristically direct comments from the typically gracious rock and roll Hall of Famer, who has built a reputation for speaking highly of his peers despite the notoriously competitive nature of the rock world. The leaked audio recording and transcript have created a firestorm on social media, with fans and fellow musicians alike expressing shock at the frank nature of Osbourne's criticisms. Representatives for Osbourne have declined to comment on the authenticity of the recording, while several of the artists mentioned have already responded with varying degrees of surprise and disappointment. Sources close to Osbourne suggest that health challenges and medication may have contributed to his unfiltered remarks, though others familiar with the rock legend's history point out that these grievances appear to have deep roots stretching back decades. What's clear is that this controversial interview has pulled back the curtain on long-simmering tensions in the world of hard rock and heavy metal, exposing the complicated relationships between some of the genre's biggest names. The early years. Before launching into the list of musicians who have earned his ire, it's worth noting that Ozzy Osbourne's journey through the music industry has been anything but smooth. Born John Michael Osbourne in Birmingham, England in 1948, Osbourne grew up in a working-class family and endured significant hardship in his youth. His early brushes with the law, including a 2-month prison stint for burglary at age 17, could have sent his life in a very different direction had he not found salvation through music. In the late 1960s, Osbourne joined forces with guitarist Tony Iommi, bassist Geezer Butler, and drummer Bill Ward to form Earth, which would soon be renamed Black Sabbath. With their doom-laden sound and dark lyrical themes, the band pioneered what would become known as heavy metal, releasing influential albums like Paranoid, Master of Reality, and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath throughout the 1970s. However, Osbourne's excessive drinking and drug use during this period created significant tension within the group. "I was out of control back then, there's no denying it," Osbourne admitted in the leaked interview. But there were plenty of other egos and substance problems in that scene that nobody talks about. "Everyone loves to make me the poster boy for rock and roll excess, but trust me, I wasn't the only one." This statement seems to set the stage for his subsequent criticisms of contemporaries from that era, suggesting that his perspective on these relationships has been shaped by what he perceives as hypocrisy in how his own struggles have been portrayed compared to others. The tensions within Black Sabbath ultimately led to Osbourne's dismissal from the band in 1979, a painful chapter that the singer has frequently discussed throughout his career. This professional rejection became the first in a series of adversarial relationships that would shape Osbourne's views of the industry and certain performers within it. "Getting fired from Sabbath was the best thing that ever happened to me in the long run, but it also opened my eyes to how cutthroat this business really is," Osbourne reflected in the interview, setting the stage for his surprising list of musical adversaries. The 7 musicians. According to the leaked recording, the first musician to draw Osbourne's ire was none other than Ronnie James Dio, the late vocalist who replaced him in Black Sabbath. "Dio was talented, I'll give him that," Osbourne reportedly said. "But the man spent decades taking shots at me in the press while pretending to be above it all. He comes off like this wise medieval wizard in interviews, but behind the scenes, he was constantly putting me down to make himself look better." Osbourne allegedly went on to claim that Dio had deliberately tried to erase his contributions to Black Sabbath's legacy, a point of contention that clearly still rankles the original frontman more than a decade after Dio's passing in 2010. The second artist on Osbourne's list was Mötley Crüe's Nikki Sixx. The bad blood between these two stems from the infamous 1984 tour when Osbourne and Mötley Crüe hit the road together. "Nikki loves to tell that story about me. Snorting ants, but conveniently leaves out all the depraved things he did on that tour," Osbourne reportedly stated. "He's built his whole brand on being this death-defying badass, but then acts shocked about my behavior. The hypocrisy is what gets me. The tension apparently resurfaced in recent years after Six made comments questioning Osbourne's sobriety during that period, reigniting a feud that had been dormant for decades. The third musician mentioned was Axl Rose of Guns N' Roses, with whom Osbourne toured in the early 1990s. According to the leaked interview, Osbourne harbors significant resentment over how Rose allegedly treated his crew and opening acts. "The way Axl behaved on that tour was unforgivable," Osbourne purportedly said. "Keeping thousands of fans waiting for hours, treating the roadies like servants, and having absolute tantrums if everything wasn't perfect. There's being a perfectionist, and then there's being a tyrant. He was the latter." Osbourne reportedly added that Rose never showed any respect to him personally, despite Black Sabbath's influence on Guns N' Roses' sound. The fourth name to surface in Osbourne's list was somewhat surprising: David Lee Roth. While the two never had any public feuds, Osbourne allegedly described the former Van Halen frontman as "the most exhausting person I've ever met in rock and roll," and that's saying something. According to the leaked conversation, Osbourne found Roth's constant self-promotion and over-the-top persona grading during their limited interactions. "Everything is a performance with him. You can't have a normal conversation with the man. It's like he's always auditioning for something," Osbourne reportedly said, adding that he found Roth's solo work after Van Halen to be embarrassing. The fifth musician on Osbourne's list was Gene Simmons of Kiss, a figure who has had his share of feuds within the rock community. Gene has spent his whole career talking about how it's all about the money and the business, which is fine. At least he's honest about it, Osbourne allegedly stated. "But don't turn around and try to lecture other bands about artistic integrity when you've put the Kiss logo on everything from condoms to coffins." Osbourne reportedly took particular issue with comments Simmons made years ago, suggesting that Osbourne's reality TV show had damaged his rock credibility, calling it rich coming from a man who starred in his own reality show right after mine. The sixth artist to draw Osbourne's criticism was Ted Nugent, with whom he has had political and philosophical differences for years. According to the leaked interview, Osbourne described Nugent as all talk and no substance, and took issue with Nugent's conservative political activism and hunting advocacy, which stand in stark contrast to Osbourne's own views. "He spends more time these days talking about politics than making music, and neither is particularly good," Osbourne allegedly quipped. He also reportedly questioned Nugent's tales of rock excess, suggesting that the cat scratch fever singer has exaggerated his own wild past while criticizing others for similar behavior. The seventh and final musician named in Osbourne's controversial list was Dave Mustaine of Megadeth, whose long-standing feud with Metallica has been well documented in metal circles. Dave's got this massive chip on his shoulder about being kicked out of Metallica, and I understand that because I went through something similar with Sabbath, Osbourne reportedly said. But at some point, you have to move on. He's made a whole career out of being bitter. Osbourne allegedly added that Mustaine had made dismissive comments about his influence on heavy metal, which he found particularly ungrateful given Osbourne's support of Megadeth in their early days. The industry reaction. The response to Osbourne's leaked remarks has been swift and varied across the rock community. Some musicians named in the interview have maintained dignified silence, while others have expressed surprise that Osbourne would speak so candidly about industry relationships typically kept behind closed doors. "I'm shocked to hear this coming from Ozzy," said one prominent rock guitarist who requested anonymity. "He's always been one of the most supportive guys in the business, always building others up rather than tearing them down. This doesn't sound like the Ozzy I know." Several rock journalists have suggested that the comments may have been taken out of context, or that Osbourne may have been unaware that his remarks would be made public. "This feels like a private conversation that was never meant to see the light of day," said veteran music writer Malcolm Dome. "Artists often speak more freely when they think they're off the record, and Ozzy has always been more unfiltered than most." Social media reaction has been predictably polarized, with some fans defending Osbourne's right to express his true feelings after decades, in an industry known for its fake friendships and behind-the-scenes animosity. "Finally, some honesty in rock and roll," wrote one Twitter user. Others have expressed disappointment in seeing the typically jovial Prince of Darkness engaging in what they perceive as petty feuds. "Ozzy's bigger than this. He doesn't need to tear others down to build himself up, another fan commented online. Several of the musicians mentioned in Osbourne's list have already responded to the controversy. A representative for the estate of Ronnie James Dio released a brief statement saying, "Ronnie always spoke highly of Ozzy's contributions to metal and recognized his importance to Black Sabbath's legacy. It's unfortunate to hear these comments so many years later when Ronnie is not here to respond himself." Nikki Sixx took to social media with a more direct approach, writing simply, "Pot, meet kettle. Love you anyway, Oz." The broader context. To understand Osbourne's unexpected candor, it's important to consider the broader context of his career and recent health struggles. After being fired from Black Sabbath in 1979, Osbourne launched a successful solo career with the help of his manager and future wife, Sharon. His first two solo albums, Blizzard of Oz, 1980, and Diary of a Madman, 1981, were critical and commercial successes, establishing him as a viable artist outside his original band. However, tragedy struck in 1982 when guitarist Randy Rhoads was killed in a plane crash while on tour with Osbourne. This devastating loss was the first of many challenges Osbourne would face as a solo artist, including battles with addiction, health issues, and the constant pressure to remain relevant in a rapidly changing music industry. Throughout these difficulties, Osbourne has typically maintained a generous spirit toward fellow musicians, making his alleged criticisms all the more surprising. Some industry observers have suggested that Osbourne's remarks reflect the accumulated frustrations of a man who has often been the butt of jokes within the rock community, despite his undeniable influence and success. Ozzy's been mocked for his speech, his struggles with substances, his reality show, you name it, explained rock biographer Mick Wall. After decades of being portrayed as metal's court jester rather than the pioneer he truly is, perhaps he's finally had enough of turning the other cheek. Osbourne's recent health challenges may also have contributed to his uncharacteristic outburst. In early 2020, he revealed that he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and he has undergone multiple surgeries in recent years to address injuries sustained in a fall. These physical struggles, combined with the frustration of having to cancel tour dates and limit his performing career, could potentially explain a more caustic perspective on industry relationships.